So as Dan just said, we interviewed Elliot Hitler a few weeks ago. So how are you different from Elliot Hitler?
Well, I got the vision, the experience, and commitment to moving Maine forward in a positive direction. I've served in the legislature on the Appropriation Committee and ultimately President of the Maine Senate when we had an evenly divided Senate. Taking my state experience along with my federal experience, what's happening at the federal level, being able to actually tap into some of the stuff at the federal level is a good experience to have. And actually I'm the only candidate, all the three of us, that actually has a proven track record of being able to work together with individuals, with legislators. During my tenure in the Maine Senate, we had 17-17-1 split. In Congress, if you look at the committees I'm on, the Veterans Affairs Committee is probably one of the most effective committees down there, getting a lot of things done, and the Transportation Committee. So that experience and being able to get things done, I do have a proven track record, and that will be very helpful as governor of the state of Maine.
Okay. There's a lot of talk about you and Elliot splitting the votes. Do you have any concern about that?
I feel really good where we're at.
Yeah.
Since I announced my candidacy for governor in August, we've been it's just been the enthusiasm just tremendous, and it's not only among the Democrats and independents, also Republican voters. So I feel really good where we're at in the race. I'm just going to continue building upon that momentum. Going to continue talking with the voters throughout the state of Maine and talk to them about my ideas, get their ideas, and how we can move Maine forward on the right track.
Now, when we talk to Elliot, he kind of dismisses you as a career politician, basically. And I guess one of the questions that the voters might have, and the question is, what would you say to voters who just see you as, holding the line for the Democrats for another 4 years?
I spent 29 years working at Great Northern Paper Company. At the same time, I was in the Maine legislature, which is a part-time legislature. The last 12 years, I've been focused primarily as a member of Congress, but other than the 12 years, I served part-time legislature and worked at Great Northern for over 29 years. So I've got that working experience, which is very helpful, and it keeps you grounded. And since I've been a member of Congress, I have always come back to the state of Maine every weekend, with the exception of when I went to Iraq and Afghanistan, to get out there, talk to the voters, and see what's on their mind, and move forward. And that experience, being born and brought up here, spent all my life in the state of Maine, plan to retire in the state of Maine. I'm a Mainer through and through, and that's the experience I think that we'll need for the next governor, and being able to use my experience with getting things done to really move the state forward in a positive direction.
Yeah, when you talk about the getting things done, one of the big roadblocks to that, of course, has been partisan gridlock. Do you see yourself ever being able to work across the lines, or maybe you can explain some of the ways that you could see yourself working across the lines with the Republicans in the legislature? Well,
when I was president of the Senate, we had 17 Democrats, 17 Republicans, 1 independent. A lot of people thought that was going to be a nightmare, because depending on any given day, it would depend on who was going to be in the majority. But it worked out very well, because we did work together. We started off every morning in my office as president of the Senate, Republicans and Democrats going over the calendar in an informal way to speed up the process, which it did, but it also built up trust and open line of communication. And that has always been my nature, even dealing with different diverse organizations. You look at some of the bills we've passed in the Maine legislature, the Forest Practices Act, which is a very controversial piece of legislation with the Audubon Society, the environmental groups, and the business community at loggerheads. We were able to forge a legislation that still is on the books today. The growth management legislation, the chemical ID legislation. So I can go over and over a lot of the different very complicated issues that had been split and fought for year in and year out. But I was able to bring people together to get things done in a positive way. Likewise in Congress. And when you look at Congress is dysfunctional, but the Veterans Affairs Committee is one of the most effective committees in Congress. At the time before the August break, we actually voted on 34 pieces of legislation. We combined them into 7, and was able to have votes on some of those already on the House floor. So my, what I'm known for is being able to work together. And that's why I'm the only candidate that actually does have a proven track record, being able to work across the party lines and trying to get things done. We passed a 3-tier minimum wage increase as when we had that evenly divided Senate. It went under the hammer. You don't see that today. And having knowledge of the legislative process, worked in both the House of Representatives and the state Senate, respecting that process, it goes a long way. This governor doesn't respect the legislative process. He disdains the legislative process and has over and over again has told his commissioners not to testify before the legislators, as well as the governor testified himself. So when you look at that disdain towards the legislative process, you need a governor who can work together and a governor who understands what legislators have to go through. I mean, it is a part-time legislature. They have other jobs and it is a part-time legislature. So I know what they have gone through. I've been there and done that myself. And as a chief executive, I respect their role as legislators, and I'll work very closely with both Republicans and Democrats to move positive policies through the legislature and ultimately sign them into law.
How can you better serve the people of Maine as governor rather than a congressman?
Well, it's as governor, you're the chief executive. You set the policy. You present a budget to the legislature, and you're able to communicate as the chief executive of the state of Maine with the voters in Maine. As congressman, I'm part of the legislative branch, and leadership sets the agenda in Congress, and it's a different type of process.
Yeah.
But having served in the legislative branch and ultimately, hopefully, governor, I know the process. I know what they have to go through. So I'm not going to ask them to do anything that I know that they can't do just for political purposes. So I look forward to working with legislators on both sides of the aisle to move forward. And the governor does set the agenda. And the governor is the chief spokesperson for the people here in the state of Maine. What we've seen over the last 3 years is negativity coming out of this administration. If I'm a business owner or CEO from around the country and I'm looking at a place to establish my business, why would I look at Maine when the governor doesn't even believe in Maine? And the negativity, we've made it on a lot of late TV night shows and made headlines in national papers. As governor, we'll be making headlines, but it'll be for positive purposes of trying to get businesses to locate here in the state of Maine, trying to get other businesses here in Maine actually to be able to expand and grow, and to be a chief economic developer for the state of Maine, promoting Maine. And having been born and raised here and spent all my life in the state of Maine, with my rollout of my economic policy just the other day, builds upon our assets that we currently have here in the state of Maine. Yes, I'd love to have business come in Maine that create 2,000 or 3,000 jobs, in one full swoop. But I'm also a realist. When you look at what's happening around the country, and with small businesses being able to expand, Maine has not expanded anywhere near where other states have expanded in their small business area. And that's something that it's affordable, it's doable, you can do it on day one, and we should start growing our economy by providing the resources for our businesses to actually expand in their respective areas.
So I was looking over your plan earlier today, and it does talk quite a bit about, it looks like with the education piece, you're talking a lot about the higher education and the emphasis on that. But one of the things we're seeing locally is with property taxes soaring, we've got some struggling schools. They're struggling to get, for one thing, to get community support, because whenever we talk about schools around here, it's what do we cut to get the property taxes down? So one of the things we want to do is be able to get the kids into college in the first place. What would you say for our struggling schools, and what would you do as governor for our struggling schools?
Yep. Well, one thing is actually my plan does address a portion of that when you look at pre-K education and funding pre-K, trying to put some resources up front, because there's been study after study that shows the more you can invest early on, it'll save more in the long run than actually The students will be able to achieve more academically if we put that money up front. As governor, I'll be presenting a budget that's balanced, which every governor has to do, but I also will bring stability to the state budgetary process. If you look at what this governor has done, he did huge tax cuts outside the budget cycle, which caused a huge structural gap. And then when they had to deal with that gap, ultimately, the next legislature had to deal with the governor's budget that eliminated municipal revenue sharing, shifted cost of unfunded liability back on the municipalities, did cuts into some of the tax programs that businesses invested in the state of Maine because the better program was such that they changed that program. So as governor, I will put forward long-term planning so that no future governor or legislature will be able to cause huge structural gap. We have to be fiscally responsible. We should not be doing cutting programs or spending on programs and leave it for someone else to decide how they're going to pay for it. So that's one area. We'll bring stability to the budgetary process. So when you have those surplus years or down years, my budget proposal brings stability so that it stops those ups and downs in the budget, and that ultimately is going to help local governments. One of the big problems that we've seen with this governor and this administration, the fact that he did eliminate municipal revenue sharing and shifted the cost and funded liability, puts a lot of pressure back on the municipalities, and that cost shifting is not warranted, and as governor, we'll work to address that. We'll have a lot of work ahead of us, because what this administration has done over the last 3 years, and who knows what's going to happen over the last year of this administration.
The revenue sharing is actually a key issue too. What would you do as governor about that?
Well, I never would have cutting revenue sharing in the first place. It's a partnership between the state and local municipalities. And unfortunately, because the governor decides to do huge tax cuts without paying for them, he ultimately decided to pay for them by eliminating municipal revenue sharing. That's a partnership between the state and local government. When you look at some of the problems I see facing here in the state of Maine, with local, county government, and state government, as well as business opportunities here in Maine, you have to have some certainty, some stability. And by these erratic decisions made out of the executive branch in Augusta, that causes a lot of instability throughout government at all levels, as well as in the business community. And how would you expect the business to be willing to invest in the state of Maine or expand in the state of Maine if they don't know what's going to happen next year, the year after, or whether or not their property tax will increase dramatically because of changes in Augusta, whether it's revenue sharing or the cost for education.
Do you think we could ever get back what we lost in revenue sharing?
I think what we'll have to do is look at the overall budget and where this administration has left, state government. He talks about balance in the budget. Well, every governor has to. The Constitution requires you to do that. But what he has done was cause instability in the whole budgetary process by putting tax cuts outside of the budgetary process, so he doesn't have to pay for them until the bill comes due. And that's what's causing a lot of problems that the legislature, county government, and municipal government is facing. And I will work very closely with municipal and county government to start putting stability back in the state budgetary process so that the municipalities will also have some stability in what they're doing as well as they plan forward with their budget cycles.
Getting back to education too, you say something about doing free tuition for the sophomore year. You just can give me a little insight into why the sophomore year in particular? Yeah. Well, and this is at college level, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. When you look at when students drop out of college, university, it's usually in the sophomore year. The first year, some students actually will be able to get grants and be able to get in that first year. The second year, the sophomore year, that's when they, definitely the financial aspect affects them. It's the studies have shown once they get back by that sophomore year, then they can continue. So that's why we picked the sophomore year. And for the community college system, when you look at the fact, particularly with mill closures or downsizing, and when employees at those respective companies need some training. The community college has a lot of programs that actually can help retool those workers. The problem being is they don't go through the summer. So when you look at this grant proposal to actually help the community college with training during the summer months will be very beneficial, not only for the ones individuals who need to further their education within the community college system, but also help utilize make use of the community college's system during the summer months.
Where are the University of Maine people telling you about this idea? How are they responding to it?
Well, I'm sure that they'll like it. I definitely will be working very closely as governor with all of higher ed, both in the public and private sector, to find out how can we hold down the cost of or make education more affordable, but also to utilize what both the community college and the university can do to help grow the economy. In the Maine in Congress, I was able to actually get the University of Maine at Orono some additional funding for the Knowledge Transfer Alliance, that actually the university used the economic class and other students in other classes at the university and actually put them in real life situations, such as the small businesses, and being able to help the small businesses find ways to do market their products, to enhance their processes within some of the small businesses. And it's really worked out tremendously. Matter of fact, there's been so much demand for it now that they're busting at the seams, and it's really has had a positive impact on a lot of the small businesses out there. I know actually the three of the individuals used to work at the Great Northern. When I worked at the mill, when they got laid off, they decided they wanted to go to make fish nets, and they started their operation, and they were struggling. And actually, the Knowledge Transfer Alliance University assigned the students to go to that business and really see what they can do as a class, real life experience, and help that business out. Matter of fact, they quadrupled their sales in making fishing nets. Actually, Cabela's is one of the companies that they sell their fishing nets to, and they've done that to several other small businesses, around the state. I think we have to utilize higher ed, the students in higher ed, to give them the students real life experience versus a textbook experience, getting out there in the business world to help businesses grow their business. And it's good for the students, and it's good for the business. As a matter of fact, there are some businesses that weren't going to hire any, but actually they did so well in their sales, they actually hired the students that actually helped them. Once they graduated from the university, they hired them. So this is a win-win all the way around, and we ought to be utilizing more of higher ed in that same way to help businesses, small businesses, grow and prosper here in the state of Maine. And ultimately, it will help the students become young entrepreneurs. One of the other projects that the Knowledge Transfer Alliance was really helped out is someone had an idea that they want to grow and market tropical fish. Well, the snowbird is the name of the tropical fish. They have expanded so much that actually they moved out of Orono to the coast, because I think they're spending about $200,000 in salt or whatever. And the reason why that tropical fish is doing so well, it's a healthier type of tropical fish. So, and they're really exporting that. So here's someone had an idea that they want tropical fish in Maine, and they really, it's really has worked out well. And we just got to replicate that throughout higher ed and help businesses. That's why I'm so excited about my plan, because it focuses on realistic goals of being able to get small businesses to expand if they have a little resources.
How has the small businesses responded to your plan to increase the minimum wage?
It's been mixed, but it really hasn't been that much negativity. Because when you look at increasing it up to $9 over a 3-year period, they really haven't said much about it. And actually, if you look at a lot of people pay more than minimum wage now anyway, so in the state of Maine. So one of the things that we're trying to get a hold of also, which we haven't been able to get a number, I know the president wants to do it through the executive order, as far as what effect that will have on how many businesses in Maine will be affected by the what's happening at the federal level. I don't know that amount yet, but
I think that's one thing that's a little
that,
confusing sometimes for readers and maybe even for journalists too. Is the federal government comes out with a policy on minimum wage, and then the state government comes out with a policy on minimum wage. So which is it? And we see the same thing with like marijuana and all these other kinds of issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I'm sure small business would rather have, consistent. So, because one of the arguments that could be used was, well, Maine's minimum wage is X, but Vermont's only X, or and it puts different states, particularly for border towns. But no, really haven't heard too much about it. There's just been a lot of support, and quite frankly, the comments that we've heard, by and large, are all positive comments. One that says, well, geez, that's a great idea. Why don't we take advantage of our assets? And we definitely should be taking advantage of our assets. Small businesses, 95% of businesses in Maine are small businesses. Our tourist sector's a strong sector here in the state of Maine. Let's tap into enhancing what we can do for our tourists. We have renewable energies here in Maine, in the green jobs, the green economy. There's a lot of potential here in Maine, whether it's wind, whether it's solar, whether it's tidal power. One of my goals is to reduce the dependency on home heating oil by 50% in the year 2030. I know it's an aggressive goal, but it's a goal I feel very comfortable that we actually can get to. And because we do have a lot of renewable energies here, energy in the state of Maine, and we ought to be able to start tapping into those resources.
Well, one of the big things we hear from the businesses, of course, is they're always concerned about taxes and regulations in terms of especially their ability to compete with out-of-state businesses. So how does your plan address that?
Well, actually, my plan addresses on helping small businesses compete out of state by establishing a Maine domestic trade center to really promote Maine businesses outside the state of Maine. And that's one of the big areas when you look at small businesses. They do not, a lot of them do not have the resources to be able to hire someone actually to market their products outside the state of Maine. And there definitely could be a lot of potential there to market outside the state of Maine. About a month ago, I met actually with the Undersecretary for Transportation, because at the federal level, there's a federal law that Buy America, where the federal government has to buy a product here in the United States unless they can't find it here in the United States. So I've got a list of all the waivers that's been granted, and what I'll be doing is going to, if they can make a product in Canada, China, India, there's no reason why they can't make it here in Maine. And so one area I'll be focusing on is how can we get more manufacturing here in the state of Maine, and helping small business actually tap into some of the areas that they should be tapping into to grow jobs here in the state of Maine. And if we're going to keep our younger people here, we got to make sure that they have job opportunities here in the state of Maine. And as governor, that's one thing I'll do, is tap into our small businesses, try to get them to grow, but also look at other areas, sectors we might be able to get other companies coming in. When you look at research and development and what's happening here in Maine with the University of Maine, with Jackson Lab, MDI, there's no reason why we can't get some research and development interest from the drug industry and other areas to help come to Maine and work collaboratively with what we already got here. So there's a lot of opportunity, and it gets right back to what I said originally, is you got to have a governor who believes in Maine, who has believes that Maine, the Maine people can move forward and has that positive attitude, and rather than downing Maine and its people and talk about everything that's wrong with Maine, as governor, if you have that negative attitude, you're not going to get businesses to move here in the state of Maine. You're not going to it's demeaning. And as governor, I'll have be doing whatever I can to promote the state of Maine, both within Maine as well as outside the state of Maine, and that'll go a long way. And we have a lot of people in Maine who left Maine for one reason or another. That I've heard from folks that they'd love to come back to Maine if they have a job here in Maine. And we got to create an environment that will bring them here, and an environment that will look at different areas, look at the regulatory process, see, what are we doing today? Does it have to be this way? Can we change it to make a difference? Streamline the process. And as governor, I'll be very active in that regard. And with my experiences I mentioned before, working in the legislature and in Congress, that will be very helpful as governor of the state of Maine to move these policies forward in a positive direction.
This organization or entity that would promote our products outside of the state, how would that be paid for?
It'll be paid by state revenues. It's about $250,000, and it'll be state resources to be able to do that. During my tenure in Maine legislature, we were able to provide marketing money called Showcase Maine. And one of the interesting things is when we had CEOs and site selectors that would come to visit the state of Maine, pretty much to the person, what they said was they didn't realize Maine was, really interested in business. They thought we was a vacation land because we do a good job with tourism. But once they got here, they're really impressed with what they saw. And the work ethic of Mainers is far beyond any other area that I've seen. And I'm very proud of the work ethic here, and I think we have a lot to offer here in the state of Maine, and look forward to working with the business community to move forward. I've never seen anyone running for governor actually focus on small business. They always talk about small businesses, but as far as the focus of their agenda, promoting small businesses, I have not seen that happen before, and we can do it. I know we can do it, because if you look at my plan, just takes the average of what small businesses around the country are increasing, just the average. If we can increase that by that average, then it'll be 31,000 jobs over a 10-year time frame. That is doable, and I look forward to working with small businesses here in Maine. And quite frankly, when I put together the plan over the last several months, I've been going throughout the state of Maine, talking to hundreds of people in very diverse groups, from local Chamber of Commerce, the State Chamber of Commerce, the Maine People's Alliance, just talking with hundreds of people throughout Maine to get their ideas of what they think that we should be doing here in the state. And that's when we came up with a proposal that we brought forward the other day, and hopefully people look at that and be able to make suggestions and enhance upon what we already have. It's based upon our assets, and which is a good thing.
Runs through our tough questions. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you'd like to kind of expand on about your plan, or?
I think pretty much tourism, small business, farming. Yeah. On the farming and fishing aspect of here again, that builds upon our assets. If you look at Maine, yes, we do have the oldest population per capita in the country, but we also have the youngest population per capita in the country for farmers. And there is a lot of opportunities here. There's no reason why Maine cannot be the food basket for New England. We have the land, we have the resources here in the state of Maine, and what we have to do is actually be able to help individuals find markets for their produce, but also help them when you look at the processing is a big issue we've heard from a lot of farmers. How can they process their foods? And the one I love talking about quite often is the fact that Northern Girl up in Van Buren, Maine, and Portland, I always ask people, what do they have in common? It's food. Under the Northern Border Regional Economic Development Commission bill, which is my bill in Congress, we actually were able to get $250,000 for the Northern Girl. They process vegetables that they sell to the Portland School Department. And I just came from business down in Freeport that's looking at doing a similar thing. and had some suggestions on how they actually can get the resources to establish that, so that the local farmers in Kennebec and Androscoggin County can actually tap into processing their vegetables in whatever food that they want to produce, and sell it local. And when I talk about local, I'm not just talking about an immediate community. When you look at local, within 5 or 6 hours, people consider that local. And that brings us into Boston and other states around here. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to grow our farming businesses here in the state of Maine and get good food here grown locally. And I look forward to continuing that discussion with farmers throughout the state of Maine.
So you think you'd like to see the establishment of more processing, plants to help out with the local farming movement, local food movement?
Yeah, and processing is one concern that they've had, and our plan actually addresses some of that. Markets, being able to have a stable market, when you look at not only schools and government, but good shepherds willing to purchase food from farmers. They're willing to actually, because I met with them, to reach out to food banks in Massachusetts to try to get them to buy food from local farmers. We used to produce a lot of our own food here in the state of Maine for Mainers. Now, a bulk of that comes in from outside the state. And the fact that we do have the youngest farmers per capita in the country, I think says a lot, and we can grow that even more, particularly when you look at a lot of the concerns that we have nowadays with food security, with food coming in from China and other countries that is tainted. And quite frankly, the border security, they don't do a very good job in checking these loads. Often what happens, because we only have a few inspectors, when the ship comes in, they say, no, it doesn't meet the criteria, sends it back out, then the ship can come back in. By and large, the second time it tries to get through, it does get through. So food security is a big issue, and I think we have a lot of potential here in Maine to actually grow, agriculture and in the fishery base. And tourism. Maine does a great job on tourism, but we're not tapping into all the potential we have on the tourists that come to the state of Maine. Once they come here, that's great, but when they go back home, we ought to be able to market products to them when they go back home. And that will, so we can get that year-round marketing effort to the tourists who come here in the state of Maine. And so there is definitely a lot of potential here in Maine to grow the small businesses that we need to grow, and produce jobs, good jobs, and hopefully keep some of our younger generation here in Maine, and those who might have left years ago, hopefully get them to come back.
On the tourism.
Actually, the only thing I did forget, actually, in this part of the plan, is to expand access to Medicaid, under Medicaid, because that will not only cover 70,000 people here in the state of Maine, of 3,000 which are veterans, which is the morally right thing to do. The second thing it does is the most economical thing to do, because under the enhanced reimbursement rate under the Affordable Care Act, Maine will save over $600 million over a 10-year time frame. Hospitals will receive an additional $348 million over that same time frame, and it's estimated that it will create approximately 3,400 jobs here in Maine. So that's a win-win all the way around, and this governor vetoed that legislation. The legislature was not able to override it. They're dealing with it again this session. Hopefully they'll be able to get it through. If not, that is definitely something I'll do on day one, because it's a win-win for people here in the state of Maine. The fact that we have other Republican governors around the country who are adamantly opposed to the Affordable Care Act, filed a lawsuit against the Affordable Care Act. Now they're implementing the Affordable Care Act, expanding access under Medicaid, doing their own state exchanges, because they know that's the right thing for their state and the people in their state. Our governor has chosen not to do that, and that's something I definitely will be doing.